Hello everyone, my name is Isaac Taylor, and just so you guys can get to know me a little bit better, here's my top 10 albums of all time. And this is in an actual order. I was kind of skeptical on doing an actual order, but I decided that this would be an order. So here it is, my top 10 albums of all time. Number 10 is Carrie and Lo by Sufjan Stevens. Starting off with probably one of the most liked albums of the 21st century, and that's Sufjan Stevens' Carrie and Lo. Sufjan Stevens is an indie folk, chamber folk artist who, in the beginning of his career, he did stuff on different states, and also he did Christianity, homosexuality. This album is the story of his parents, Carrie and Lo, how they treated him. After the album before it, having a more electronic feel, Carrie and Lo goes back to his indie folk roots back in the times of Illinois, Michigan, and other of his folky albums. One of my favorites is, of course, Illinois, but Carrie and Lo has been my favorite. It's super sparse, which might be a bad thing for some albums. This album, it really works because of how personal it feels, almost like you shouldn't be this personal with an artist. I now know so much about Sufjan Stevens, and he doesn't even really have a personal life that he shows off to the mass public. And it's really cool to hear these lyrics from him. Even though I don't deal with the things that he has dealt with, I still feel a connection to the music because I can empathize with Stevens through this album. Next up is Either Or by Elliott Smith. Elliott Smith is the same Sufjan Stevens indie folk. You'll see that I really like indie folk music. I'm from West Virginia, and since I grew up around country music so much, I know a lot about country music, but I never really liked it. But when I found out about a lot of the indie folk music, I was really intrigued because a lot of times it's way more personal and not as radio friendly. It's usually more experimental in country music, so that's what made me go to the indie folk side and the singer-songwriter side of more acoustic music. And Either Or by Elliott Smith, most people do know this album. It's one of the most sad albums you'll ever listen to. Same thing as Carrie and Lo. These albums are very similar, and it's very hard to talk about because they are so similar in instrumentation and not really lyrical content, but the ideas of the lyrics being more dramatic, sad, and depressing. This album's really good, and I've listened to it like 1,000 times. There's so much to it, and anyone who just likes lyrics, I think, should listen to Either Or by Elliott Smith. I don't even remember where I heard this album from, but it was around the time I listened to Carrie and Lo and was looking out for more indie folk music. And another album that'll be talked later that's also pretty big in an indie folk community. And yeah, it's a really good record. Everyone should go listen to it. 10 out of 10, amazing record. What's my number 8? I actually forget my number 8. I feel so unprofessional. Next up is from the hip-hop artist that hip-hop group that got me into hip-hop and made me listen to more hip-hop. And it's The Money Store by Death Grips. This wasn't actually my first Death Grips album. My first one was Ex-Military, which we'll talk about actually later in this video. Death Grips is a trio from Sacramento, California that formed in 2011. I know a lot about Death Grips. I talked about it in my last video, a Tom Avell video, just go to watch his channel. His most popular video is My Encounters with Death Grips, a great video on the history and reviews of Death Grips albums. And The Money Store is usually up there as people's favorites. It's either their favorite or second favorite, but I have a favorite that's different. Death Grips is just so chaotic. I had never listened to anything like them. Of course, the hip-hop that I grew up with is on the radio through features and pop music. Occasionally, the Beastie Boys I would listen to, but that just wasn't something I listened to all that often. I listened to like Eminem, like early Eminem, Marshall Mathers LP, and that was about it. And whatever my dad had on, he didn't even like hip hop, so I wasn't exposed to it like I was to 70s prog music and a lot of that until I started to really get in to my own with my music listening preferences. I had never gotten into rap music, but Death Grips was my first voyage into hip hop and also more patrician music, because usually they're in that. the more experimental side of music. That was the first experimental artist I'd ever listened to. I had listened to like Tyler the Creator, but I never understood Tyler the Creator until I listened to Death Grips, which sounds completely backwards, but it's not, at least for me. The Money Store is such a good album. My favorite Death Grip song of all time, Punk Weight, is on this record. I actually have the vinyl record coming. I want to say tomorrow it'll be here, and I'm really excited to listen to it through a record because I've only listened to it digitally. Rides verses are all over the place. I love the lyrical content, the producing, the mixing, everything about it. One thing I have to say that's better than Ex-Military, my favorite Death Grips release, is the mixing on it. Everything's way not really quieter. It still is chaotic, but if you've listened to Death Grips, their very early stuff, the EP, Ex-Military, you'll know that they're very loud, especially in lower volumes. They're still very loud. You have to be very far down without it blowing out your fucking eardrums. And I really enjoy the loudness, but this is a more controlled loud, which sounds weird, but it's really not. All around, this is a great record. Anyone interested in hip-hop, even if they don't think they'll like it, they should listen to it. I've had a bunch of friends listen to this. They don't really care for it all that much because it's not their thing. They don't like Death Grips. But they're my favorite band of all time. They're just so weird and chaotic. I love them. Next up is Flower Boy by Tyler the Creator. Yes, it's that far up on my favorites of all time, which sounds kind of weird. You know, it's a 2017 album. It was only my album of the year last year. And why would it be so far at my number 7 if it just came out? I feel like it's going to be destined to be a classic in hip-hop. It's way more soulful than anything Tyler the Creator had put out. And I like Tyler the Creator. He's actually my first concert. I don't think I've worn my concert merch in a video yet, but I have the Bumblebee Square t-shirt. I get a lot of compliments on it. It's a great t-shirt. Anyone that see me in it on Snapchat or anything like that, yeah, it's a great t-shirt. Every song on this, either from the more chaotic songs like Who That Boy and I Ain't Got Time to the more slow soulfuls of November and See You Again, which See You Again is my favorite Tyler the Creator song if you saw my bracket, when March Madness brackets were a meme, rest in peace. All around a great album. Everything about it I love. Every song except maybe Droppin' Seeds because I don't like Lil Wayne. That's just me. I don't like Lil Wayne at all. I know a lot of people that do, and they love that song. All around great listen. Even if you're not into hip-hop, you should listen to it. It's really it's almost a soul pop rap album. It's just great. It's not really radio, but I could see radio listeners, this could be their voyage into more than just being on the radio. I love this album. It has such a big impact on me as a music listener. It's my most scrobbled album of all time, and Tyler the Creator is my most scrobbled artist of all time. So yeah, everyone should go listen to Flower Boy or Scumfuck Flower Boy, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. Next up is the first and not last emo album. A little backstory, I think if you've known from my previous years, my vinyl record collection, and my part 2, my quarter 1 of music video, you'll know that I was into the whole Tumblr core music, and so I kind of grew up in middle school, that time where usually your music taste starts to divert from your parents' music taste, whatever they have on. As I said, country music, 70s prog rock, which my dad really likes. You start to get into more. I listen to Black Parade. I listen to a few Fall Out Boy songs, Fever You Can't Sweat Out. And I kind of stayed in those 3. My Chemical Romance was like my most listened to. 21 Pilots, I really enjoyed. I don't really like any of them anymore. The Black Parade used to be my top 10, but it has been like in like my top 20. I want to say I still think it's a perfect album. It's definitely probably one of the best in the top 5 rock albums of the 2000s. Yeah, but this is an album that I recently started to really see its potential, and that's Home Like No Place Is There by The Hotelier. And Home Like No Place Is There being in my top albums, I mean, it's pretty obvious. You'll know it's in my 10 out of 10 albums on Rate Your Music if you look at that type of stuff. For an emo album, a lot of people look at emo as just like this really awful,
nasal sounding
vocals and really just kind of plastered on guitar, bass, and drums but this album, again, it's very lyrical, and that's its main driving force into being a perfect album. But it has amazing playing, just knowing that the vocalist is the bassist also, which I'm primarily a bass player. That is my bass. I don't really play guitar occasionally, but mostly it is bass and drums, and a few wind instruments because of marching band. It's really good playing, not really simplistic, but not really torn down. It's just good playing and very straightforward, but with that, it sounds amazing. It's really on the production side. Housebroken is in my top 10 songs of all time, I'd say. It'd be somewhere in there. All around great album. Anyone that's into any type of emo music or just rock music in general, I feel like this will be known as a classic soon, hopefully, because this album's great. And this might be controversial, more controversial than the last. People Who Can Eat People Are the Luckiest People in the World by Andrew Jackson Jihad, or AJJ as they're now known. Folk punk music I didn't get into until actually this year, and I never heard this album, but it's had such a big impact on me through this year already that I'm super into the genre. I've listened to more like Pat the Bunny and more Andrew Jackson Jihad or AJJ. All around, this is kind of the folk punk album, except maybe Against Me is reinventing Axl Rose or whatever it's called. This album came out in 2007, but it feels older than that. It feels very retro, but not in like a geeky, dumb way. All around, the album's really good. Everyone should go listen to it. Not a lot of people know what folk punk is, and I'm kind of in a folk punk band because I showed a bunch of friends this album when I first found out about it, and they loved it and wanted to make music like not really exactly like, but you know what I mean. They wanted inspired by Andrew Jackson Jihad. I liked Can't Maintain, but it's not really my favorite of theirs. More like an 8 out of 10. It's good. It's a good album. I don't come back to it as much as People Who Can Eat People. But yeah, great folk punk record. Next up is Death Grips, Ex-Military. Ex-Military's fucking awesome. I fucking love Ex-Military. Everything about it. Lyrics, production, everything. Basically everything you can say about the Money Store, just take out anything electronic and place it with punk. This has such a punk rock attitude with the samples that it also picks. It has a sample of Black Flag's Rise Above on it, and it has like some Pink Floyd samples. I could be mistaken by a different prog rock band. Jane's Addiction samples, and it starts out with a sample of a Charles Manson interview. It sounds amazing. It's such a good record. There's so much to it, and I really do feel like this is a great way to have someone who's more into punk and metal go into hip-hop that isn't Eminem or Post Malone, which I've seen a weird correlation between the two. Like, metalheads that are into, like, Bring Me the Horizon are into Post Malone kind of equally, which is kind of weird. But yeah, great album. Listen to Ex-Military by Death Grips. I want to talk about it more when I talk about all of Death Grips. Next up is the final emo album you'll hear from today, and that is Best Buds by Mom Jeans. I talked about this a little bit in my vinyl record collection, and I do want to talk about it more when I do a review for their album Puppy Love. It's supposed to come out this summer. They actually released a single today. It's on their Bandcamp, momjeansca.bandcamp.com. If you're into the whole summery emo music, it sounds very beach-like, very stoner-esque. I don't remember when I found out this album, but I know I found it at the right time, because that's something I think about a lot. A lot of my favorite albums, I find at the correct time, and they just become really, really good through that. Like, I remember these good times. So yeah. Best Buds by Mom Jeans, I've talked about it a lot, and it's one of my third, so. Next up is actually from my favorite year of music, 1997, and that is the Mollusc by Ween, I don't see this album a lot. It's one that I'll occasionally see being viewed from like British music chart posting, because Ween is a very popular band. They're my favorite rock band of all time, which I think I've talked about a few times. I am buying the Mollusc by Ween soon on vinyl, and I can't wait. It's on Turntable Lab, and it'll occasionally go out of stock, but it's not right now, so I think I'm gonna buy it. The Mollusc is weird and experimental, very ocean-like. If you don't know the whole thing of the album, is the Mollusc inspired Steven Hillenburg, the creator of SpongeBob, to create SpongeBob. Ween did the song Loop de Loop off of SpongeBob, and this is actually their favorite album, Dean and Jean Ween. That's not their actual names, that's their pseudonyms for Ween, and I wanted to go see them in concert because they were going to Cleveland, which is about a 4-hour drive from here, closest place that they would come. Tickets are $90 a person, so I'm not gonna be seeing them, which sucks because they seem so good live. I've seen videos on YouTube from their prime and also from recent, and they just seem great. Every song on this is completely re-listenable. I adore this album to death, and a lot of people do. It's funny, it's weird, it's experimental. Everything you'd want in an art experimental album is in this album, and it's so good. I love it to death. Next up probably isn't a shocker, but mainly because anyone that kind of has this at their #1 of all time is usually seen as a hipster, and really I have nothing to really say. One, you've heard this album 1,000 times if you're watching this video, more than likely, but that's In the Airplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Cartel. My god, this album's so good. I adore this album. I've said that so much now. It sounds so alliterative now. I've said it so many times. Oh my god, I love this album so much. There's so much to enjoy in this record. The lyrics are perfection. The playing is perfection. Mixing, everything about it. I've talked about this album a few times, mainly in my vinyl record collection because I have it. And if you haven't bought the 33 1/3 book, it's only about 100 pages. It's a really quick read. Some of them have pictures, so if you're into that, you can see pictures from the production of In the Airplane Over the Sea. Neutral Milk Cartel was a short-lived folk band, which, as you know, I said there'd be more folk in my top 10. So here's the rest of the folk music. I love this album so much. There's not really much to say. I really just want you guys to listen to it. Every song is a 10 out of 10, from only being like 30 seconds to being 8 minutes in length. It's also a pretty short album, even having like varying song lengths. I'd say it's only about 43 minutes, a very normal length. In the Airplane Over the Sea, everyone needs to experience this album in many ways. They also took so much care into the vinyl record part that it sounds different. It's a different listening experience on a record. One, because it's hipster as fuck. And two, because it's just different if you listen to it on speakers and not headphones. And it's not just because my headphones suck. It's because they're good, and they're good headphones. They're Audio-Technicas. I mean, ATH M50X. Thank you, Marquez Brownlee, for that. Yeah, just an amazing album. I think most people have listened to it by now. It's kind of a seminal album of the 90s. It's so memorable. I love the record to death, and everyone needs to listen to it. Well, hopefully that made you guys see more about me. It's summer, so hopefully I'm going to have some more videos out more often. So that'll be it for today. Everything I listed, please go listen to it. It's a great listening experience if you want to get to know more about me. And that'll be it. Bye.